Supercell is known for creating games such as Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, and Brawl Stars, and all of these games follow a freemium model, but why is it that some of them have seemed to gone down a pay-to-win route? In this video, we're going to talk about the duality of Supercell and compare some of their most loved and most hated games. But first, we have to go back to the origins of Supercell to see how they've evolved over time. Supercell was created on May 14th in 2010, and it was founded by 6 people. I'm not gonna bother trying to pronounce all their names, but 2 of them had previously worked for another video game company called Sumiya. Kodis Sajo was a co-founder and Panenen was a CEO, so these 2 obviously had experience, but they would end up leaving the company after Digital Chocolate bought them. They created Supercell because they wanted to create a game company where executives wouldn't disturb the work of the game developers, and unfortunately, Supercell would face the same problem a few years later, which I will get into later in the video. The first game they made was a browser game called Gunshine.net. It came out in 2011 but was pretty much dead by 2012. And so Supercell shut it down and instead decided to focus on only mobile games. And this is where they found their success. Their first game was called Heyday, and this game was released in June of 2012 for iOS and November of 2013 for Android. This game was similar to another popular game called Farmville, and this is probably why the game ended up doing so well. It was their first breakout game and the 4th highest game in revenue generated for 2013. And paired with Clash of Clans, they were reportedly making over $30 million a month in 2013, which was incredible for a company which had just had a massive failure with their first game 1 year ago. And I'd earlier mentioned Clash of Clans, which came out in August of 2012 for iOS and October of 2013 for Android. And I'm sure everyone here has heard of and most likely played this game. I even made a whole video about it if you want to check that out after watching this one. This has been their biggest game and one of the biggest games in the entire world. The game was pretty unique for its time, which is possibly why it became so popular. And it was a free-to-play game on mobile, which allowed just about anyone to play it. And it has stood the test of time as it still averages around 100 million players a month over 10 years after its release. It's obviously no surprise that Supercell would want to capitalize off of this, so they ended up creating another very similar game called Boom Beach. This game was soft launched in Canada in November of 2013 and then released worldwide in March of 2014. But unfortunately, the game would face a big decline over the years, and Boom Beach Frontlines, which was a spin-off of Boom Beach created by Space Ape and backed by Supercell, would end up shutting down in 2023, even though it was just launched in 2021. This would essentially mark the end of the Boom Beach games, but Boom Beach would also mark something else. It was the end of consecutive games released by Supercell. Supercell had released at least 1 game a year from 2011 to 2014, but after Boom Beach, this would stop. In 2016, Supercell was bought out by Tencent, which is a massive company that seems to have a stake in every video game company and is often regarded as a monopoly, and also what seems to be the downfall of many games like Clash Royale. Clash Royale was released in March of 2016 and was a spin-off of Clash of Clans. This game was very popular and some people may argue that it was even more popular than Clash of Clans itself. But unfortunately, it wouldn't stand the test of time. I have a whole video about the downfall of this game if you want to check it out, but to sum it up quickly, it basically became a pay-to-win game. And I know people are going to argue that Clash of Clans is also pay-to-win because you can pay to upgrade everything, but in that, you're still paired up with opponents at similar levels, and you can pick who you want to attack, unlike Clash Royale, where you may be paired up with someone who has cards that are multiple levels higher than yours, and they may even have magic items which help them win. But the interesting thing about Clash Royale is that players blame the developers of the game but not Supercell itself. For just about any other game that faces criticism, it's always a publisher that gets blamed, Look at Ark and Snail Games for example. There has been a ton of backlash and controversy surrounding Ark, but instead of blaming Studio Wildcard, the developers of the game, the players instead blame Snail Games, who bought Studio Wildcard and became the publisher of Ark. And this is because of multiple reasons. First of all, Snail Games has had a bad history with ruining games, and you can find out more about that in this video if you want. But a second reason Snail Games is blamed is because many of the bad updates and problems around Ark really started appearing after Snail Games acquired it and started taking control. This is evident in the Ark Conquest servers and DLCs such as Extinction, which is what most people believe started the downfall of the game. I am mentioning all this because Clash Royale is in a similar situation, yet the developers are the ones being blamed and not Supercell directly or Tencent, and I will get more into this later in the video. But the next game they released was in December 2018, and it's called Brawl Stars and often regarded as a released pay-to-win game. This just shows the duality of Supercell and how one game they completely ruined and made pay-to-win, but the next game was much better and way more fun and not pay to win. Now, if you go look at all 6 of their games that I mentioned, Supercell only has 2 that are still alive and doing really well, while the other 4 have either been turned into pay to win or have lost majority if not all of their players. And there's obviously the argument that some of these games, such as Heyday and Boom Beach, were already around for so long, and it is just natural that they have lost their players. But when you look at Clash of Clans, it was created around the same time and is still very much alive and active with millions of daily players. So, what is the reason for the duality of Supercell? One factor could be the involvement of Tencent in the company. As mentioned earlier, the release of Clash Royale and involvement of Tencent happened around the same time, and it is likely that Tencent urged Supercell and the developers to make Clash Royale more pay-to-win until it got to a point where it was extremely pay-to-win. Supercell probably noticed this and realized they were too far gone with Clash Royale and instead worked on Brawl Stars, which they made considerably less pay to win, and therefore it was also very successful and very loved by the community. But another reason could be just because of the individual dev teams working on the games. The Clash Royale developers could simply just be more greedy than the developers working on the other games, and to explain the decline of the other games, it is likely that Supercell just cut the development team and instead assigned them to work on their other games, or they decided to hire outside studios to try and revive their games like they did with Boom Beach, where they teamed up with Space Ape to create Boom Beach Frontlines. Ultimately, it would end up failing, but it still showed them experimenting. Either way, Supercell has definitely created some nice fun to play free-to-play games, and they've also created some pay-to-win games, both of which have been successful, but only one has been loved by the players.